According to my guest this week, epic natural resources and delight can be co-created out of thin air. So says Briony Greenhill, vocal improviser extraordinaire. And we could all use some of that. So if you want to find out how to get it, stick around.
Welcome to the Clown Spirit Podcast. And here's your clowntastic host, Mr. Barnaby King.
Every single episode of the Clown Spirit Podcast is intended to bring you lightness, joy, and connection, to fill you with the inspiration, playfulness, warmth, and connection of clowning. That is the goal of the podcast and of Clown Spirit. But each episode does it in a slightly different way, a different guest, a different topic. Sometimes I'm rehashing old clownversations, editing them down, making them more palatable, more digestible, shorter, and on a podcast format. In other episodes, I'm just talking about things that really, really matter to me, deep issues, things, reflections that I have about clowning. And in other episodes, like today's, I'm interviewing new guests, not necessarily clowns, but people from all walks of life, people who've made an impact in the world, leading thinkers, teachers, artists, creators, who I think have some kind of connection or relationship to clowning. Today's episode is like that. And after you've listened to it, I'm sure you'll agree that our guest today has so much to contribute and offer to the world of clowning. So, without any further ado, take it away, Briony Greenhill.
Here's all my darkness and light, strength and frail, knowing will ever know and soft at bedtime, and wondering who will be mine.
Briony Greenhill is a vocal improviser who connects the worlds of creative play, voice work, personal growth, and liberation, political activism, and sacred practice. She's a professional singer with 4 completely improvised albums, a studio album, and also a highly respected and successful teacher of collaborative vocal improvisation. In the southwest of England where she lives, she connects with a deeply creative community that includes clowns such as Holly Stoppit, whom I'm sure many of you know, and with whom she taught a collaborative workshop earlier this year exploring the connections between her vocal improv work and clown. And in fact, as we talked, we found many connections between what she's trying to do in her world and what I'm trying to do in the world of clown. Namely, to gather people together around powerful spiritual practice, creative practice that makes a difference in the lives of individuals and aims to create change in the world. So I began by asking Briony about this phrase that I found on her website, change maker. I found it a really fascinating phrase because we associate this word maker with artists. We sometimes call artists makers. So maybe we can think of change as something that has to be made, created, brought into being in the same way that artists bring works of art into being.
I love this question. And when you think about making, when you think about artistic making, was it Einstein who said genius is 5% inspiration, 95% perspiration? So an artistic practice or a show, sure, the inspiration comes and it's like love. You have, here is this thing, here is this wellspring. But then you have to practice relationship then for however long you're going to stay with this person, or you have to make the inspiration worthy of an audience's attention somehow by whatever medium you're using. And so then the immense hard work and persistence and staying with the act of return, intending and cultivating, that shapes your life. If you make making a thing that you do. And then what if you don't do that? It's all hypothetical. Then you just like, you get made by other people's making.
So it sounds like what you're talking about here is if you're not consciously making your world or involved in making, then you're being made by other people. So there's a kind of power dynamic. You're potentially being exploited by others' world-making activities. Is that what you're saying?
I'm aware of how power has been wielded very intentionally by people for thousands of years to condense resources in the hands of elites, and access to power being a resource and access to money being a resource, and the different strategies, whether it was through the church or through colonialism or through slavery or through like modern global PLCs or whatever, but like this way of getting the stuff to come to you so that you can have it your way in this world. And I'm aware that has often been done by a mentality of taking and extraction and dominance and violence. And we're like, violence is okay. Like, it's okay to use violence to get the thing that you want, or the land that you want, or the body that you want, or the natural resources or the human resources that you want. I want to say like a dragon spine of that paradigm. You can trace it back as far as you can go, and then there's people tracing it back further. Like I can trace it back about 2,000 years now of British European history, and then there's people who trace it back 5,000 years, whatever. And
we're talking about modernity.
Yeah, really. Yeah, the roots of modernity. But even where do we start modernity? Because you would maybe start it with the Industrial Revolution, but you have to look earlier as well and earlier. And so what if I'm a woman with a life-honoring way and earth-based spirituality, and I care about the children and the elders, I care about them more than human. I'm Cherokee initiated, and so that means that I, Bahama Takuyasin, hello, all my relations, no one more important than the other. So in that paradigm, I'm equal to the earthworm. So figured. How do I practice that? So on one hand, I live with pain of living among those who see, I don't know, like British and Israeli interests as more important than like Palestinian or Arab interests.
So I can see the power imbalances you're talking about, and the traces, the consequences of modernity, and I can see the necessity for change. But let's link it back to the making. What is it about your practice as a singer, musician, composer, improviser that can impact or create change in a political system?
When I sing in a way that draws from my long work of paying attention to shall we say, the political world, big P politics, I don't mean who's in power right now in a grey suit, like how are we to live as ourselves with each other in the world, and different ways of approaching that. And so I suppose for me, when I sing, I mix my big picture politics and my political philosophy life with my musical, my improvisational life. And so music comes out and lyrics come out that fuse them, and this is happening like more and more in recent work that I haven't recorded yet. And then I do a gig. And this is what happened recently, and it's really keeping me afloat right now. I did a gig locally, and a woman came along, and she contacted me afterwards, and she said, I really think we need a different paradigm. And my husband, when I said it to him, he's just there, dear. What's wrong with this paradigm? And in a way, they're some of the winners of modernity. And so she's a bit lost. She's been a stay-at-home mum for 5 years, even though she went to Cambridge and has done all these things in the world, but she's, and she comes to my gig and she goes away feeling like validated and inspired and connected. And I love my husband, but I'm not going to let him just twist me on this anymore. And she's like, okay, I'm an artist. How can I be a new paradigm artist, or an artist for a paradigm shift, or a designer of a paradigm shift designer, or a new paradigm designer? And what would a blog exploring that be? What would a sketchbook exploring that be? I'm going to go towards this because this is important. And what I feel I'm holding right now in the world is like each song of this new repertoire that isn't about yet. It's Dumbledore and his like pensives, like the memories that are like in those test tubey things. Each song is like a world or a piece of world view kind of condensed in the pensive of the song. And so you start playing this song and suddenly we go into the pensive together and people cry and people think and people and then people come out feeling differently somehow, either feeling more empowered or more validated or more connected or less alone or less, we who like want to see the world really quite profoundly change, like the values it's based upon change from these, let's say, modernity, patriarchal, capitalist, extractive, colonial, harmful crap to like life honoring, earth honoring, generative loveliness.
This is very similar to the way that I think about clowning, in that when we're in clown, when there's a clown performance happening, the audience becomes one with the clown, and we become this kind of creative force, creative merging of, and we create a world that's of that moment. The clown is like the shaman or the holder of the space that allows that to, and channels that. You have this word also on your website, ceremonialist. And I'm curious, how does that transpire in your world? How does one engage with ceremony? What is ceremony, and how does it serve us, particularly in a, I think, in a society and culture that seems very divorced from, a lot of the time, kind of these deeper moments of ceremony and the sacred?
I would more say ritualist, actually, because like Malidoma Somé, who I think his book, The Healing Wisdom of Africa, 15 years ago, I read it and it was like my gateway into, I was studying like practices of collective joy and clowning and singing and dancing in these ways that we come together and use our creativity to make specialness. And I was employed to research that internationally. And what I was noticing around the world is people don't do this just cause. There's usually some reason, and you add meaning and boom, you're into ritual. Like humans throughout time come together and sing and dance and use theater and all kinds of things to enchant their lives, to do something of meaning, to celebrate a harvest or a death or a birth or a coming of age or a change of season or what have you. And Malidoma says like ceremony is quite a managed thing, usually managed by the human master of ceremonies. And now we will do this, now we will do that, and now it is the end, goodbye. It's all under control. Whereas a ritualist will hold space for the void, which I'm guessing is at the heart of your improvisation practice and is at the heart of mine. It's like the not knowing, the emptiness, giving the space for the bigger aliveness to come in and join the party and have some room in the proceedings. And so voice, the power of voice, and enchantment, like in French, like enchanté. Chanter is to sing, to chant, to sing. It's we start singing together and the vibes change, things get special. We have the drums come out, our hearts start beating together in unison in times with the drums, in time with the drums. And this kind of co-presence that we share through sharing voice. Like I do these workshops called vocal improv for men, because not many men come to my workshops. So then once a year I do a weekend just for men, and they're always full. And when we have some of our awareness with ourselves, some of our awareness in our kind of allies in the field, in the room, in the space, and some of our awareness with a person that we're looking at, anyone in particular. So we have this kind of three-way awareness, and everybody's doing that at the same time. The men were saying like, oh, something's about to happen. Are we about to fight? No, we're about to sing. But to improvise together, we got to have this, some of our awareness with ourselves, some of our awareness with the group, and some of our awareness with whoever we're looking at in that moment, this kind of three-way attention. And so once we're together in that way and connected in that way, we're into special space. And then if we want to say hi to the ancestors, or say hi to the more than human world as the season is shifting, or say hello to the season of winter, and how are we going to do it with some intention this time? Are we going to get swept up in a kind of gangbang of toxic overconsumption? Or what is this season about for me now? Or if we want to say goodbye and mourn someone leaving, or we want to say welcome and celebrate someone who's just arrived into life or out of life. And so ritual and ceremony is these ways that we come together and be with what's important to us and use whatever kind of creativity is available to enchant, proceedings and leave a little space for. Yes, I'll be back. In a sec.
Oh, sky, help me out, my heart hurts. Open way, my home is far and I said goodbye. I'm so sorry to blame my sadness with you tonight when it's meant to be party time and maybe about you but not me. But I open my mouth and here is what comes out. Just sing that with me, sing that. Harmonize if you want to. Thank you for your touch, your song. Thank you for your tears and your vulnerability. Shared with me, showed me ignorant is human.
So that was the track Give Me Hope from Briony Greenhill's album entitled Sketches, a collection of improvisations. And you can find that and download it on her website, brionygreenhill.com. I love that track. I found it very moving. I think particularly the opening with this sort of domestic ambience with a baby crying in the background, and it just seemed so evocative of what it is to be mixing life and art and work. It seems to evoke a lot of what Briony is talking about. So let's get back to the interview now.
I'm curious about so many things that are emerging and thoughts as you speak. So one thread is to do with, you've mentioned a few times that you have a political science interest and background and training, and that you think very structurally in one way, like about history and power. And I noticed from some of your blog posts that you're interested in advocate for taking responsibility, engaging with the political system in some way, in some level. So you've got that side to you. But then there's this other world that you're engaging and talking about a lot, which is this aliveness, this space of emptiness, and this access to a kind of spiritual deepening and presence with oneself, with another human, with the more than human, and the unknowable. And cultivating, I love that word that you used earlier, cultivating. Maybe even that's better than making, right? Change cultivator, cultivating change. I guess one of the mysteries for me, or the interesting questions, is how do we bring those two worlds together? The world of being a citizen and democracy and politics and voting and economics, and then the world of engaging with our deeper being and existential level. We go and do this one thing, and then we go and do this other thing. Is it about balance and being clear when we're in one world and when we're in the other? Or is there a way in which those two worlds can merge more? And how do we do that in order to heal society, heal ourselves?
We don't know exactly what to do. And we don't know how to make it through this. On my website, brionygreenhill.com/media, one of the things is a thing called What to Do in These Powerful Times, which was a podcast a couple of years ago I was interviewed in. And the whole time we spent saying, what if you applied the principles of collaborative vocal improvisation to politics? I think there's a thing in the masculine template, like you need to know. It's not okay to not know, especially if you're a guy in charge, especially if you're a guy in power. And that has, I think, influenced like cultural norms around the behavior of people in power. But like when you're like within modernity, you're within the paradigm of modernity, what you can see as modernity, you've got your glasses on and you have to know. And we've got like epic intersecting wicked problems. I mean, I don't know what things are like in Oregon right now, but like yesterday I spoke to a friend who's a doctor. I bumped into her and the thing, and she's the sole earner for a family of 5. I said, how you doing? And she said, we're okay. But she looked me in the eye. She said, the mortgage is killing me. And she's a doctor, for F's sake, and she can't support a family of 5 on one income. People in Britain, for most of us, are stretched to the max and beyond just to pay our bills right now. It's like, what am I saying? We have to somehow be responsible for ourselves in the paradigm of modernity, even as we're in $250 trillion of debt globally, and you add up like all the national debt, it's $250 trillion, where it was last year. You're in this mad system, but you've got to like keep your head above water and feed yourself and your children, whatever. And on the other hand, there's a longing for an economically more manageable life and hope for our children and for the forests and the rivers and the bears or what have you to be okay. All these longings, you could say they're swelling from like our indigeneity or our like, because that's like an indigenous reality. It's like folks in the US lived in balance for 6,000 years before white folks arrived, and they lived in an indigenous way. And then the European ways come in and shit, places are on fire, places are flooded. And there's various pieces of work showing that most people in power, like if you ask them off camera what they think we're really fucked. And then you ask them on camera what they think, change the light bulbs and it will all be fine. It's like, wow, our leaders are inauthentic. They're pretending they know what to do because there's a story like they should. You're in power right now and you have to somehow improve things. And you have to know, even though your glasses are only this big, please don't believe you have to lead from a point of knowing. It is so valuable to crack into, I don't know, I don't have the answers. Then you start listening and then you start wondering and then you get curious and then you connect to other people and the different perspectives that we all have in a circle around the elephant. And I see the ear and you see the tail and we start to put it together. And then also if we can get authentic with each other. Pretty soon after I moved to America, I was in my kitchen, the sun streaming through the windows, listening to the radio, and I heard the CCTV footage of a homeless, mentally disabled black man being kicked to death by 6 policemen, and as he died, he cried for his father. And as he died, he cried for his father. It was a little too much to hold in my human body, and I found myself waiting. I had never heard anything like that in my whole damn life. I found my fist pounding on the bathroom door. It was too much for me to hold, and the glass splattered in little pieces all over me.
That was This Is America, again from Briony's album Sketches, a collection of improvisations. And I think a really good example of how Briony herself is trying to bring these two worlds together, the world of politics and social reality and the world of music, art, and improvisation.
So I think these worlds have got to fuse. I don't think we can do it on our own as humans without acknowledging the more than human, without acknowledging the bigger aliveness, without acknowledging women and old folks and young folks and brown and frogs and earthworms and so on, and being in this like listening together, the way clowns listen to each other in the audience, the way improvisers listen to each other in the audience and themselves, because there's a piece of the wisdom in you but not the whole of it in anyone.
Let's talk about listening for a moment then. You just made a really interesting connection there. And I'm always talking and thinking about what are the specific qualities that a clown training or practice can bring to anyone that's really helpful for their life or for the world. And listening maybe is a really good one to think about, and a point of connection and similarity between a clown and a vocal improviser.
Right now in my life, I am on my knees at the door of the Church of Clowning, frustrated. Help me, save me.
You seem very clown-like already, I have to say.
Good, thank goodness. That's how I'm surviving. Because, yeah, I led with Holly Stop It a week this summer, and it was freaking so good. And we did half vocal improv and half kind of clowning, fooling Holly stuff. And we loved it and everyone loved it. And I realized like, oh God, clowning for me is such a medicine right now, because I lead this terribly serious life. Like I'm married to a shadow worker. Just like a shadow buster. He's like, any situation you walk out and it's, oh, that was nice, darling. He's, yes, but did you notice the da-da-da and the da-da-da? Just like, oh, like it's so heavy. And then we're raising a child in a broken world, and we're like renovating a home, and we need to change the political system. And I have all this grief and trauma to hold in my students. And then I have to earn all this money to pay for this house and feeding everybody as organically as possible, if we possibly can. It's like a really freaking stressful life, man. And I get with Holly and something loosens up, and I start playing with the bathwater as it comes out of the taps. And everywhere in my mundanity is opportunities to create some really felt delight, and like my heart seems to expand and be this epic natural resource, and delight can be created out of thin air. And it's not enchantment of the sung kind, but it is its own kind of enchantment. I'm not quite sure how linguistically it works. It's not like enclownment, emplayment. Stephen McNanabitz writes about this in Free Play, improvisation,
yeah.
Leela, like the universe at play, like the Hindu world. And so it's something like there's the fritter of wind in the leaves, the kind of the river and the fish jumping in it. Like there's something in life that wants to be playful and needs to be playful. And
so the way I think about it in clowning is more disenchantment than enchantment. When you're enchanted, you're like in the spell of something. You're under the spell of an idea, of an ideology, of a belief, of a story, whatever you've been fed. And so clowns come in and they disenchant you. They let you see the reality beneath the spell. And then space is clear to re-enchant. So there's this kind of cycle of disenchantment and then re-enchantment, but on different terms. So there's a dismantling that clowns do through playfulness, because they take things apart and examine them and reveal the cracks and allow space to grow and to emerge.
isn't there a wisdom in that? It's like eating the meal and then digesting it, pooing it. Or a cycle, east and spring and budding and summer and flourishing and autumn and diminishing and winter dying and then northeast rotting and decomposing.
Yeah, and then the clowns come in and eat the flowers.
Yeah. And then in spring to sprout anew. And life work, like nature works cyclically, and like modernity doesn't. It's very linear and gets attached to it is this way, and the clown makes it wiggle and go in circles and loops and other kinds of shapes.
See all those pictures of the dry hillsides where the people planted trees and then the rains returned before their eyes, and the birds and the plants and the animals all came back, revived magic are those who wear scruffy hats and jeans that haven't been washed in a long time and grin with a glint in the eyes and don't look like normal kind of guys and girls, but they have this secret knowledge of regeneration, and they know the way to be with the birds and the bees, with the plants and the seas, with the showers and the rains, the fires and the plains, and all things, and they will be our new kings and our new
I love that you mentioned poo just now, because that is an essential facet of clowning, is the shit. Clowns love the shit. Sometimes the real shit, and sometimes just metaphorical shit. But the stuff that we want to flush away, that we don't want to deal with, clowns like to take that out and have a good sniff and throw it around a bit. And it's like this organic process, composting. The shit is that we need to process. We need to process it, and because it becomes the thing that fertilizes new growth.
That's it. The heyoka, the sacred clown, and the, what is our word for the holy poo? Because isn't it great how it comes out just like earth color and almost earth texture, just a bit moist, because it's almost earth again, and then the newness can grow from it, fresh.
Where does clowning meet the vocal improv world? Do you find that they merge well? Is it playing when you're doing vocal improv?
I think that these are facets of our wholeness, the ability to play, the ability to sing, the ability to, like I say, the ability to sing, like just the ableness of singing. I think we come born with a voice. It's part of our human design that we can sing, but that gets quite stamped down by cultural experience often. And so by the time people are adults, it's sing. So the ableness of opening your mouth and singing, and the ableness of meeting life playfully and authentically and sensitively that clowning cultivates.
It's interesting because singing and clowning have this difference, which is that singing is a technique that involves a very specific motion or action of the body. Clowning is more nebulous. There isn't an obvious source of that, or it's more like clowning to me is something you can bring to anything else.
Yeah, it's sweet, it's tenderizing, it's surprising, it catches you off guard, but it's enlivening to everyone involved, if not a little threatening perhaps to people who are sat on a throne of inauthenticity that could crumble if too close a light was shone on it. But that's the job then of the clown, to let those kind of thrones crumble, to make them crumble, to be a change maker.
That's exactly it. And singing is a glorious bedfellow with clowning.
Singing and clowning, glorious bedfellows. Yes.
You get a lot of release and freedom from singing, right? When you really
Yeah.
you let it go. And it's the same with clowning. There's so much freedom and release. I think that's what drew me to clowning in the first place. I felt very restrained and restricted in my everyday life. I had to behave in a certain way. And when I'm in clown, I have this permission to just do what I want. You know, I can do anything. And it's like freedom. It's permission, license.
For your clowning, did it do the job?
Oh, yeah.
So you would do it initially before you were a clown. You were like, oh boy, I'm becoming aware of my constrictions and I'm not enjoying them.
Yeah, but interestingly, I still struggle in everyday life to bring that clowning. I still sense the moment when I can switch into clown as something I have to do quite consciously, and there needs to be the right conditions for me to do that. I can't just switch it on at any time and become the clown, which some people can. I know people who clown, who can just switch it on and they're clowning and being that free, funny being. Whereas I feel like I'm performing when I'm clowning, and I can't always access that in any everyday situations.
There's with the parallel, I think, with vocal improv, because I know what you mean, because for me, there's different types of singing, and I can sing right now, but to really go into it, it's kind of like a form of arousal. I have to be warmed up to be in, and I would be in like a kind of a different state to be like really doing it. With vocal improv, it's like it's literally a different brain state. Like they put scanners on the heads of people. Actually, they weren't doing vocal improv, they were doing piano improv. Like these pianists like playing from dots and then improvising. And when they improvised, their frontal lobes went really quiet. And our frontal lobes are like the bits helping us, like they're our executive function. They're keeping us like speaking politely and behaving legally. And that went quiet. It's kind of like being drunk. Their emotional centers got really loud, the limbic centers. So it's, your sensibleness goes, your emotions get loud, and then your environmental sensitivity gets really loud, and your awareness of your environment and your deep memory banks open up. So it's like suddenly you're like not sensible, highly emotional, very environmentally sensitive and connected with your deep memory. It's like a totally different state. It's like being drunk, and the safety that we then need to go on some kind of psychedelic journey among others in company. It's okay. But when we do workshops, we do that arousal process together. We enter it together, and then we're all in it together.
Each heart is like a flower in a vine of a plant, and no heart should be alone, and no heart is separate from the other hearts. We are flowers on a vine, we are lives in a line, we are humans wanting to try. We need to belong and to touch and be connected with all life. We want to live in the love, in the arms of the earth, in the holding of all of nature, and your touch and your skin and your eyes and your voice and your heart and your
I hope you enjoyed Briony's wisdom. That final song was called Thank You for Your Heart, and it is part of Briony's studio album, Crossing the Ocean. If you want to download any of Briony's wonderful music, you can do that on Bandcamp, on YouTube, or on her website, brionygreenhill.com. If you enjoyed the podcast, please give us a thumbs up, share us with your friends, write us a review. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you tune in for the next episode of the Clown Spirit Podcast. Keep clowning.
We all need it easy, and we all need a safe quiet of a good night, and we all are creatures